Good, good. Well, welcome to another Black History Conversations. This is session 120, 120 sessions since we started in October 2020. It's just been remarkable, and I can only thank all of you for supporting and contributing, and it's just great to see you all on the screen. Sadly, though, we haven't got Laura Trevelyan joining us on the screen at the moment. Unfortunately, her son's a special meeting she had at her son's school has had to be put back to later in her morning. She's in New York at the moment. So I was just checking my email, but I haven't seen a reply to my request. Well, can you make it next week then, Laura? But it'll give us a little bit of time to get organised and stuff. So anyway, okay, so as you know, I start the sessions with an acknowledgement of country, except I can't see the PowerPoint anywhere. It's obviously my day today. Right, let's just start again then. Find the PowerPoint. Here we are. And back I go, chat amongst myself. Here we are, right. So, we were hoping to welcome Laura, and we're not able to. I've explained that, so we'll go back to that in a bit. But I start the sessions because I'm here in Australia to say that I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which I'm currently living. That's the Wurundjeri nation, people of the Kulin Nation, their elders, past, present and future. This land belongs to the sovereign people of the First Nations. It was never ceded. It always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Okay, so on to the next one. Now, as you know, we've also been exploring ways of being able to acknowledge the challenges that exploitation by the British and other European countries inflicted on the planet over the years. Okay, let's just talk this one through, and then we ask if there are any comments, improvements, anything on this. So Black History Conversations, we acknowledge the injustice of the actions taken by the British and other European countries that invaded and took possession of islands in the Caribbean Sea, as well as the continents of North and South America. In addition, we also recognise the exploitation of the great continents of Africa, Asia, Australia and many other parts of the world in the centuries of colonialisation and ongoing exploitation. We acknowledge that this has resulted in the destruction and destabilisation of so many nations, peoples and cultures. And every now and again I get to find a new map of the world. This is one that doesn't even have Australia on it. Okay, so we're about Black history, African history, European colonial history, and the history of Indigenous peoples and our shared history. Right, so last week, just to catch you up quickly, we had a catch-up session, and we were catching up to talk about the new website. That's still work in progress. So reminds me at the moment there's an initiative going on in North Wales, some training sessions about the story of Reverend William Hughes and his students at the African Institute in Colwyn Bay. And the week before we had Alexander Scott with us from Liverpool to Lampeter and back, researching and curating transatlantic slavery. It's a really interesting session and we've got that recorded. Okay then, so I'm going to stop sharing now. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask everybody who's joined us today, if you mind introducing yourself and telling us a bit about your project work. So I'm not quite sure where to start. Coy, maybe we could ask you, as you've joined us from Jamaica today. Vivian Crawford's also joined us from Jamaica. Coy's the chair of the Penance Project. And I don't know if you've been reading the emails I've been sending out, Coy, but we've discovered that there's some funding we can apply for exchange visits. So very excited. I want to talk about that. So welcome, Coy.
Thank you very much. As you know, I'm Coy Roach. An engineer by profession, trained in Leeds, lived in England for the period.
Oops.
And director of geological survey for Jamaica, and managing director of a government mining company. Now retired for 2 years and taking it easy at home.
Until I started disturbing you. Coy chairs the sessions every Thursday at 9 o'clock in the morning over there of the Penance Project, where we're trying to put together applications for the Douglas Pennant Family Foundation. And that's proving quite challenging, but there's some good news, and I hope if we can get through this next week or so and get an application together, we may be able to get some exchange visits going. That would be good, Coy.
Did you get an email from, I get Eureka this morning?
Sorry?
I got Eureka this morning. She said
Oh,
that
yeah.
she sent you an email.
Good.
Yeah.
Yes, she has. And she says she wants the copies of the
Right.
applications, and I'll send them to her.
Okay.
Well, that's brilliant, Coy. Thank you very much indeed. Right, I think we're going to swing over to you, Lucy. You're down there in Devon. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you've been doing relating to Black history.
Okay. My interest was first at the age of 18, I did voluntary service overseas in West Africa, and it marked me for life. I think I was a very lucky young woman. I taught English and French and African history in a secondary school. There weren't any textbooks yet, so I had to use existing history books for the history. I was probably more ignorant than my students about African history. And I don't think I realized that actually I was part of neo-colonialism in that setting, because I thought I was doing my best, which I was, but it wasn't very, that was the situation. And looking back, I can see it. In the late 70s, I went to work at the Royal Albert Memorial Museum as education officer. It was a fantastic learning job. It was before the national curriculum. Now the students come and they all do the Romans or they all do the Victorians. At that time, teachers decided their own curriculum. So I had to learn in order to teach. And I think I was very privileged to be in that position. And at that museum is a portrait which has been known by various titles, called like the Unknown African Portrait. It's now known as Man in a Red Suit. There's been a renaming of it. And it's an image you will probably all know. And I was working at that museum when it was the bicentenary of the publication of Equiano's narrative, 1989. And actually I organized the national conference because nobody else was. And I was able to get some funding, and I did it based in the museum. And I was told that was a portrait of Equiano. I now learn I'm wrong. And that's, for me, typical of what this work does. We find things out, we think we know it, and somebody comes along and corrects you later, which is great because it means we're talking about it. And so I worked as an education officer there. I then worked in the World Cultures Galleries when they redisplayed them. I've worked as a humanist officiant for ceremonies, non-religious ceremonies, and more recently, there is a statue in Exeter. There are not many colonial statues in Exeter, but there's one of General Buller, who is the most fantastic story of the military in colonialism. And I worked on a group who produced a new interpretive panel. And that indicates, in a way, how my interest has broadened to general colonialism on a personal level. And having written a bit about local Black history and about Devon's connection with slavery, I really think that I need to turn the light onto my family history, which is quite profoundly colonial. And I need to do that work. And I'm quite frightened about doing it. let's hope I have the courage to do it, because I think that's the work I should be doing now. I didn't realize I was going to be so self-revelatory, but there you go.
Thank you so much.
I just really thank my lucky stars that I had that placement in Nigeria at such an early age, which gave me a different historical perspective, which disrupted my post-war education, which gave me a very British-centered view. I mean, I was born into an empire. I had to unlearn stuff. And I think the work that we're doing and the work that you're all doing, I think contains a lot of unlearning as well as a lot of learning. And I count myself very fortunate to be still engaged in this. Every now and again, I think perhaps I should be painting watercolors or something, but I'm not interested in that. Thank you.
Oh, fascinating. So many resonances there, Lucy. So thank you very much for being very personal. And others on the screen at the moment may also know that I have also been exploring my family history. Oh, I'd have to get up and fetch them. My cousins and I went to Lancaster when I was back in the UK, because we have family from Lancaster who things have been passed down through our family, like the silver biscuit barrel. That's the one that really gets me. What kind of a family has a silver biscuit barrel? They must have been up to something. So I'm researching my family history as well. I think it's really important. And when we do get to hear from Laura, it'll be fascinating, because she's, you know, taken such enormous steps, and she's got such an interesting background. So yeah, and I also spent time in Nigeria, but I was even younger than you. I was 12. I went when my dad was working out there. So that was really lovely. So okay, we've got Jacqueline Pennant joined us now from Florida, which is really lovely. And we've also got someone else joining us at the moment called Ola Ola, but I don't know Ola Ola, so we'll chat with them in a moment or two. All right, thanks ever so much, Lucy. That's really good, and lots of interesting things you've done there. Robert, do you want to introduce yourself next and tell us a bit about what you've been doing?
Yes, Robert Moore, long retired academic. I spent most of my academic career researching and writing on race relations, immigration policy, and so on. And like Lucy, I was born into an empire, and probably born into one that was a bit larger than the one she was born into. And I can remember in primary school, Empire Day every year. We marched around the playground carrying flags and had talks about the great benefits of the British Empire to the benighted people of the rest of the world. Just an anecdote on that, which will amuse some people. I was on a school outing, and for some reason, I think we were traveling on the Central Line down to Essex somewhere. And we were in the booking hall of Piccadilly Circus Underground Station. And the teacher said, "You are now at the center of Piccadilly Circus, which is at the center of England, which is at the center of the empire, which is at the center of the world." Now, I mean, that was the kind of rhetoric to which
Yes.
young people were exposed. So I'm now working with the North Wales Regional Equality Network in North Wales. We've got a very big project, which I'll tell people about more later, because we're just getting ready for the launch. But there will be a big, it's not history, it's contemporary. Most of the exhibition contains stitched stories made by people from various minority groups who've produced these wonderful works of art, really, which variously represent their memories, their longings, recollection of family, life in the UK, and so on. And then alongside that, there's a whole suite of films of people from ethnic minorities talking about either coming to Britain or living in North Wales or the experience of racism. These are all very short, snappy films. And then there are some films of people who've been working in North Wales to combat racism. So it's really quite a big undertaking. And the main exhibition will travel around a number of venues in North Wales. And there's a smaller aspect of it, which will move to more accessible, more public locations in county offices and police stations, hospitals, and so on. So that's keeping us pretty busy.
Well, thank you very much indeed. That's absolutely brilliant to hear about that. And as you say, when it's been launched, then we'll be able to perhaps hear a bit more about it, and you might have an online version even to share with us. Lindy, do you want to introduce yourself? Lindy, I can't hear you, and yet the microphone thing isn't on the screen. Whoops. No, I can't hear you. I am really sorry. So greetings, Lindy, to you. And perhaps you can type a little message into the chat or something, or sort out your headphones, maybe not plugged in right or something. I'll leave you to sort that out.
Is that better now? Can you hear me now?
Can,
No.
perfect.
Obviously not.
All the way here in Australia, yes. I can hear you. Put your things back on.
Who, me?
I could hear her briefly.
Yeah. Try speaking now, Lindy.
What?
Yes,
Yes.
I can hear you.
We can hear you.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Yes, fine now. Thank you. So, Lindy, how about you then? You're up in North Wales with
I don't
Robert.
think you needed those. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I can. Fine.
Yes. Right. Okay. Sorry about that. I don't know where the sound was going to. Right. I, unlike most of probably the people here, don't have a very direct connection with anything involved with the slavery or current Black Lives Matter activities. I suppose, like so many other people, I was introduced to into the empire, but I had a curious experience with my parents. My grandfather, it turns out, would not have stayed in the same house where there was a black man if it had not been for the fact that the black man in question was a guest of my father's, and in his etiquette, it was worse to be rude to your host, even if the host was your son, than it was obviously to be rude to a black man. So on that occasion, he stayed. The black person in particular, a man called Davidson Nicol, who became quite important and influential in various aspects in Sierra Leone. This would be about the mid-1960s I'm referring to. Had curiously met my parents. I don't know why. My mother had some kind of writing do. And as my parents lived in a sort of rural area in Lincolnshire, where my mother kept hens and horses, this was a bit different to his own experience of living and researching at the time in Cambridge. We then go on to, when I went to university, I became indirectly involved with or directly eventually, with the Aberdeen anti-apartheid movement, because there were people there, and who I knew who involved with it. I'm now, last few years, I've been doing sort of on my own accord as an independent student, history research of various sorts, mainly connected with Scotland still. And I've been doing two types of work. One is following the life, I'm trying to follow the life of a woman called Isabella Fyvie Mayo, who, as far as I have so far discovered, was about the only person who, on the memorial activities, the celebrations of the anniversary of, I think, the birth of Thomas Carlyle, a famous Scottish writer, was the only person who actually pointed out his racist writing and views. Everybody else was praising him. She also she also wrote stories. This was she was writing the mid-19th century about supporting the Aborigines in Africa, in Australia as well. So she was quite an interesting person, and I'm still doing work on her. She was involved with campaigning against lynching of African Americans and so forth. The second area that I've looked at a little bit.
Fascinating. We're getting more people on the screen now, so I'm going to just say we'll stick a pin there. Thank you very much for that early introduction of your life. We'll hear about your second point perhaps later. But what's fascinating is that, you know, with Robert, we're recognising we're of an era. With Lucy, we're recognising we're of an era, and, you know, we're having to unlearn things. Now, my colleague Vivian Crawford's in Jamaica as well. Vivian, can you hear me? Wonderful.
Very, very well, although you are so far away.
This is so true. Well,
I'm hearing you very, very well.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. Vivian, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Oh, thank you very much, Liz, and good morning, good afternoon, good day, good night to all our viewers and listeners. And upfront to thank Liz most sincerely for coordinating these activities. Liz, I just want you to know we are indebted to you. God knows we are indebted to you, and thank you. I am Vivian Crawford. I worked for some 25 years at the Institute of Jamaica. The Institute of Jamaica was established in 1879 by a colonial governor, Sir Anthony Musgrave, for the encouragement of literature, science, and art, specifically Jamaica's literature, science, and art. As executive director, I was able, with the cooperation of the board of directors called the council, to establish in Jamaica 7 sites of memory. And the most significant for me would be the first space where Christianity, the first Christian church was built, a place called Seville in St. Anne. Those of you who go to Duns River Falls would have passed it. I was a member in Paris of UNESCO, a special committee there. But in 2003, as chairman of a committee, I was able to establish Jamaica's first UNESCO declaration that the music of the Moortown Maroon should be part of the intangible heritage of mankind. And I am descendant of Maroons because freedom is always freedom. And in 1740, the British gave us, negotiated with us our freedom. So I have that freedom spirit in me. This morning in our local newspaper, I want to say in closing, because it's a nugget, the Rhodes Scholar for this year is announced. It's in the papers. And it's interesting to note, the Rhodes Scholarship, as you know, was established in England 1902, came to Jamaica 1904. because there was a Jamaican missionary, Reverend Henry Hemans, from a place called Porus in Jamaica, in Manchester. He was a missionary in Africa, and on his way back to Africa, he met Cecil Rhodes on the ship. And Cecil Rhodes told him about the establishment of the scholarship. So he told Cecil Rhodes when it became established, in his will, he should make provision that it be accorded to Jamaica. So England, 1902, Jamaica, 1904. We continue to be grateful to Liz for her energy. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Your contributions to our sessions are truly remarkable, and your support, Vivian, it's so powerful, and I'm very grateful to you too. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, right. Well, that was fascinating to hear those points. Helen, are you okay? It sounds a bit awful when I'm jumping around the screen.
Yeah, I'm fine. I mean, I've been listening to Al. I've been, I kind of joined the group in 2020, just after it started. Yeah. But I had quite a period of about. It was interesting listening to Lucy, because I too was a VSO in Ethiopia, and at the end of my career rather than the beginning, and that had a huge influence on me. I worked alongside somebody called Val Huggins, who works at Exeter University, you may be aware of. I'm in North Wales, Robert and Lindy. And the reason I've been missing quite a bit is I've actually taken on new responsibilities now. I'm a trustee of the Flintshire City of Sanctuary, and I'm also doing a permaculture diploma. And I've put the two together because I'm doing one project, a campaigns project, looking at climate migration and basically the impact of climate change on migration across the world, and hopefully trying to influence sixth form students, 16 pluses in our area, to get involved with looking at voluntary activities, particularly in relation to asylum seekers, refugees, and so on. So I'd be very interested, Robert, in finding out more about your stitched stories and films. So I've got kind of a new direction now, that having started doing Ethiopian children's books and then studying H.M. Stanley and so on, I've gone off on a completely new direction. And I'd be really interested to know certainly from people in Jamaica about whether there are permacultures, across, the other side of the world.
Sorry, whether they are what?
We have an awful lot to learn from, outside of Britain.
What are you saying, Helen? What are they called?
Permaculture. So permaculture projects. I mean, it's mainly land-based, mainly, agriculture-based, but it's something I've kind of now got really interested in, because certainly for, like I say, the project I'm doing with the climate migration is looking at how we basically start to change agriculture methods and so on in order to be able to reduce global emissions. And I think we have a lot here to learn from other parts of the world.
Helen, that's really interesting. We're trying to support the North Wales Jamaica Society, are trying to support the young farmers in Clwyd to link with the equivalent group in Jamaica. And they're going to be looking at, possibly looking at, how in each place they're adjusting to climate. So that's one point. So if you wouldn't mind coming back to me on that one. And then in terms of climate migration, here in Australia, our Prime Minister's visiting various Pacific islands at the moment, Anthony Albanese, and he has given the reassurance to one of the chains of Pacific Islands, I apologise, I can't remember what it's called, that they will have the right to live in Australia if and when their country is affected by the sea level rising, because it's really, very, very pointed and That's interesting. So yeah, that's another little point. Thanks very
Thank
much.
you.
I'm just going to ask Ola now to say hello. Are you called Ola? Hello. I can see you. Yeah, great. Where are you joining us from? It looks like San Francisco.
No, I'm not in San Francisco. I'm actually in Finsbury Park at the moment.
Finsbury Park. Doesn't
Can you
look
hear
like
me?
Finsbury Park that I know. Yes, I can.
Yes.
Ola, tell me who you are then.
Yes. Yes, I've tried to get on last week. I'm just basically doing some studies with regards to reparations and looking at the different not fractions, but the different kind of components that are making up the movement at this moment in time.
That's really interesting. So obviously, I don't know if you've gathered, Laura's not able to join us, Laura Trevelyan, today. So she'll join us as soon as she can on another occasion. So I'm just waiting.
Oh, okay.
If she replies to me and by email today, I'll know. She's in New York at the moment and had a family issue she had to attend to. So Ola, do I call you Ola or just Ola?
Ola.
Ola.
Yeah.
It's really lovely that you've joined us. And as you gather, now I've explained to you what's happening. We're doing things really quite differently. So we're going around introducing ourselves, and then I've got a PowerPoint of things that I want to catch up with people. But we've got such an interesting group of people with us as you gather, and certainly.
Yes.
Your work on reparation, you might be interested in what Vivian Crawford and Coy Roach are doing. They're both based in Kingston, and they're supporting a project where we're getting the Douglas Pennant Family Foundation, who are the descendants of the people who built Penryn Castle and had plantations in Jamaica. So that's a kind of a reparation project, but we don't really call it that at the moment. So yeah, we'd love to keep in.
Well, yeah. Well, I did actually come on for, but it doesn't matter. That's just as good. I'd be happy to hear what's happening around that also. Yeah.
Great. Okay, that's really wonderful. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Jackie Pennant, is it hot there in Florida then?
Yeah, it's nice. It's I think it's in the high 70s, somewhere around there. Gosh, so it's nice.
Okay,
so, hi.
Jackie, just introduce yourself, will you?
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Jacqueline Pennant. Go by Jackie. Got interested in this area by just doing some family studies, family heritage studies. Learned about Penryn Castle and the connection. Visited the castle, and all of this that I'm learning is like I'm just learning all this as a result of joining Jamaica Wells Society, and also coming on Black History Conversations, doing some reading, and all of this is what I've been learning about the connection to the Penryn Castle's connection to Jamaica. So just interested in just learning more. So I'm getting an education just along the way.
Really interesting that point you just made, Jackie, and I really appreciate your support. Jackie was the person who suggested to us that we should have some acknowledgement in our Black History Conversation sessions. Jackie, we're just going to apply for some funding, Welsh Government funding. When I say we, I'm Director of Learning Links International, and we're going to apply for some Welsh Government funding for under the strand of adult education. Now, I didn't think about doing this till somebody pointed it out to me. Because really what we are doing is adult education. I mean, I come from an adult education background, formerly in colleges, so I know about that in the UK. So what you're saying is you're learning by coming through these sessions, and that's really what we need to get over. So with any luck, we're going to be able to get a group of people from Wales over to Jamaica to do some research over there. And you know what we're focused on, pendants and pendants community and the other communities. But also to get some Jamaicans coming over to Wales to be able to, you know, see for themselves and understand the other side. And with a filmmaker, so we want a good filmmaker, and we might be talking to you, Robert, about contacts. That would be great. So hopefully we can involve you in that, Jackie. And while I've got you here on screen also with Coy Roach and Vivian Crawford from the Penance Project Committee, it would be really useful, I think, if you were interested to join that. And that's on a Thursday morning. I mean, I don't want to take up your entire life on Zoom calls, but that's Thursday morning at 9. It'll be about 9 o'clock for you. It's 9 o'clock in Jamaica.
If you send me a link, that would be good.
Yeah, because you have the heritage in your name, and obviously that's a key thing. And basically, what we're talking about is the issues that you've been interested in. So that would be really good. I think that will make that link. Okay then, right. So I'm going around the screen again. So thanks, Jackie, very much indeed. Thank you. Before I come to you, Garrick, I'm going to ask Sean to introduce himself. Are you up to that, Sean?
Right. Hello. I don't know why my video isn't working, but so pity you can't see my mugshot. Right, my involvement in reading, writing and talking about Black British history and slavery and abolition is complex. Influence include my parents' left-wing politics, my love of singing the songs of Paul Robeson when I was a child, and then my work with the housing problems of Caribbeans in Wandsworth and Lambeth through the Wandsworth Housing Rights Centre and Solon Housing Association, and then working with Caribbean activists on the Community Police Consultative Group for Lambeth. I've done work on Black history of the London boroughs of Croydon, Lambeth, Merton, Sutton and Wandsworth. I was involved in the Black and Asian Studies Association and for a while its secretary. I've shared an enormous amount of information about what's been going on in Black history and the debates through blogging. And I believe in sharing information. So Lucy is one of those people who I've liaised with over many years. I was the project worker on a 2007 Remembering Slavery project in the Northeast, during which we discovered the Trevelyan connection with slavery on Grenada, the details of which are on the Northeast Labour History Society's Popular Politics database. Although there was an enormous amount of work we couldn't do in the 2007 project, so we added that as an element in another project later on popular politics, and there's an enormous amount of info on that database. For the last few years, I've been working with academics at Durham University, and that has triggered the employment of specialist staff on Black history and what's in their collections. And now we brought into the mix the cathedral authorities as well. But one of the problems with research is one gets sidelined into all sorts of interesting topics. So I've also worked with Andrew Prescott, who used to run the Centre for Research into Freemasonry at Sheffield University on Black Freemasonry, worked with the English Grand Lodge archivists and librarians on how they could tease out from their records the Freemasons in the West Indies involvement in slavery. Another sideline has been looking at the orange trade and its links with places like Florida, where the oranges were dealt with by slaves. I'm also coordinator of the Samuel Coleridge Taylor Network, which promotes the composer's life. Okay, thank you.
Fantastic. Well, Sean, I'm really glad you're with us. I'm sorry we're not able to see you, and I have to say you sound good. Good. Ola, switch your mic off, will you? Okay, so Walter Lavell's joined us now. Walter's joining us from wherever you live, Walter, in Jamaica. I can't remember. Maypen, I think. You there, Walter? Walter's just getting his coffee, obviously. Roland, we've got Justice for Unjust Generations. Roland, are you there? Or are you just listening in? Okay, so Garrick, over to you. Oh, sorry, Roland.
I'm on the train traveling up to Liverpool.
Okay.
So I'll just listen.
You just listen. Thanks a lot. Roland's one of the activists, and you'll explain, Garrick, won't you, who he is? So, Garrick, I'm really delighted to welcome you along today. Garrick kindly co-hosts this and keeps an eye on what I'm doing and make sure I don't fall asleep. Okay, Garrick, thank you.
Yes, good morning to our friends in Jamaica, and good afternoon to our UK friends, and almost good night to Liz, because it's creeping up to bedtime. Just listening to Sean, quite interesting. It's the same spelling, Sean. I have a brother named Sean. It's exactly the same spelling. And you referred to 3 local authorities in London: Southwark, Lambeth, and Wandsworth. So I work across all 3 of those in the 70s and 80s. And also when Linda Bellis was in Lambeth, I work alongside Linda Bellis. And most of my activity then was around campaigning for better housing for Black people. And I mentioned this previously. The work we did back then was really bringing people out of squatting in empty houses to actually get local authority housing, council housing, before they changed the law and squatters' right was then removed. That could be another story another time. Okay. So just a form of introduction, Roland is on his way up to Liverpool because tomorrow we're delivering a conference in Liverpool jointly between a new organization, Liverpool Advocates for Windrush, in partnership with Justice for Windrush Generation. And tomorrow we're meeting in a building that many Africans meet regularly. And our work tomorrow, we're targeting people of African heritage. So across the continent of Africa, those living in Liverpool is very much a target conference. If I can just show you this, Liz. Here is the flyer for tomorrow.
Yeah, very good.
With the new website and a QR code and other things. We've designed this flyer and the photos, and we copyright that. That belongs to us, so nobody can use this. and quite interesting. Just a couple of points just to mention to the audience in relation to, I heard the word reparation was mentioned. There's a big conversation taking place now across CARICOM and the African Union. Very shortly, in another week or so, there will be a major conference in Ghana with head of states discussing this issue. This is the global conversation. There are other conversations happening in different places at a local level. This is the global conversation in relation to heads of states. And in the Caribbean, there is a number of heads of states will be represented at this conference. I have introduced Eric Phillips from Guyana to Professor Palmer, and Eric Phillips have kindly invited Professor Palmer to this conference. Professor Beckles will also be attending this conference. So watch this space, a major conference coming up on reparation in partnership with CARICOM and the African Union. I'll just say no more for now.
Yeah, tell us more about that at some stage, Garrick.
Sure.
And Ola, I'm sure you'll be interested. Maybe you're involved with that. Okay, so thank you. I just changed the screen, so I need to just change it back so I can see, check that I've said hello to everyone. Walter, are you there? Like a seance, isn't it?
Yes, I'm here. I'm here, Liz.
Good, Walter. Well, thank you very much for joining us. And for those, any of you who've joined and don't realise, unfortunately, Laura Trevelyan can't join us this morning, so it's a bit kind of difficult.
Oh, Liz.
Yeah.
Liz, were you? Did you send this invitation out to the MP Central Clarendon, Mike Henry, because he's heavily involved in restoration?
Oh, right. Okay. I'll send that on to him.
I have sent you his contact information.
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure what aspect it was I was supposed to be. It was Mike Henry. Okay, I'll make sure he gets that information for the next session. Okay.
All right.
Thank
Okay
you.
then. All right.
Walter's an activist in the Penance Project, where we're looking at trying to make these links with North Wales and the Penance community in Clarendon. And in fact, we're looking at Bangor City, twinning with May Pen. So it's some really big things going on. And Walter, we've got some, we can apply for some funding, Walter, through Tithe for adult education. That means some of us adults can go on the exchanges. So we're going to have a catch-up session about that at some stage. Right, having gone round to everybody, we've got various comments in the chat. So thank you very much indeed. Garrick's put a whole lot of information in. But Robert, you've asked me, can I make a comment about the Australian referendum? And I quickly looked at one of the weeks I actually did. I produced some PowerPoints because it was really very difficult to speak about it. So this is what Reconciliation Australia said, and how so many of us felt when the referendum resoundingly turned down the first Australians' right to have a voice to Parliament. I mean, it was so significant. So it's a profound disappointment. But the leaders of the campaign that had created the Uluru Statement from the Heart, which had been accepted by Anthony Albanese's new government, and a referendum had to be held to make this change in the Australian constitution. But unfortunately, the opposition were very clever in their campaigning, and they had a slogan: "If you don't know, vote no." And because a lot of incoming settled Australians, remember Australia had a white Australia policy till I think the 1960s or 70s. So we're not, I mean, there's a lot of nationalities here, but an awful lot of people don't know much about the first Australians' history, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. Anyway, the elders called for a week of silence and they didn't comment at all for a week. And at the moment, it's all gone very quiet. So it's just the saddest thing that could possibly have happened. It could have been so inspirational had it all worked properly. And if I can just put another PowerPoint on the screen for you. This is really poignant. In my acknowledgement of country that time, this is Marcia Langton. She's a professor, and she says, I can read it on my screen, you probably can't. Reconciliation is dead, and other Indigenous leaders have declared a week of silence. So very, very difficult. I really don't quite know how to respond in any other way, but I'll keep you informed about any possible progress. But it's really been a tragedy for Australia and a tragedy for the world, because it could have been a positive step that we were seeing as we moved along instead of a negative one. So very disappointing. Right, okay, so I'm going to just find my ongoing PowerPoint that I'm working on today. I've opened a couple of others. And this is a new idea. And so I'm just presenting this for the first time because I think that there are people who we really need to acknowledge and recognise. And so with our new website, which is going to be called Unlocking Black History, we're going to have a concept of having awards. And we're going to recognise people on whose shoulders I feel I'm standing. People who've gone before over the years, done so much in terms of uncovering the stories of our shared histories, Black history, African history, whatever we might be. So Marika sent her apologies. She's not at all good these days, and she explained why she didn't feel she could come along to the session. And I said, well, Marika, I said, I've got an idea. I said, we'd like to recognise you for the incredible work you've done. So this is a Black History Conversations Unlocking Black History Award. So Marika and I emailed one another quite a lot yesterday so that we got the wording right. So Dr. Marika Sherwood is a celebrated historian who survived Nazi occupation in Budapest, then emigrated to Australia before moving on to Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea, Enna in Sicily, New York, and then London. Marika challenged racial and social discrimination everywhere she lived and worked before devoting her life to unearthing much hidden history about the illegal slave trade. The presence of Africans in the UK some 2,000 years ago and the beginnings of the Cold War in Africa. She's published many books and articles. She's very well respected. In 1991, Marika was a co-founder of the Black and Asian Studies Association, which Sean, you mentioned earlier, which published a newsletter, held conferences, seminars, and worked with and supported many Black organisations. And in a way, that was kind of before my time of being much involved. As an internationally recognised scholar, Marika Sherwood was given an honorary doctorate of history by the University of Chichester in 2022. So Marika Sherwood is the first recipient of an Unlocking Black History Award this year. So I hope, yesterday was also Marika's birthday, so I hope receiving this certificate on email, she'll be able to print it out and stick it on the wall, whatever. So I just thought it was lovely. I thought it was really, really great. So on we go then. Right. Da, 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 da. This is just to say, and Sean, you may want to say a little bit more about this, and I'll ask you that in a moment or two, but this Black Nation Studies Association was just amazing. And we'll have a little talk about that in a minute. But I thought we ought to have nominations for more Heroes Awards in terms of unlocking Black history. And I've put forward some proposals here. And some people are here on the screen reading this. So let's just go through. I think Dr. Jim Thakordin, he's just done so much. He's such an activist, and he comes on these sessions sometimes and chats with us. So I think he'd be a good person to nominate. So I'd like to nominate him. I'm also a good friend and supporter of Professor Sir Jeff Palmer, and he's a supporter of me too. So he's been on many of these sessions, and he's recently done such incredible work in Edinburgh about the can't remember the name of him, statue, and just amazing. I remember the first time Dundas statue. Thank you very much indeed. The first time I ever heard Jeff speak, it was at the Institute of Jamaican Nationals in Birmingham. And I remember thinking, I could listen to this guy forever, because suddenly he was speaking the truth about Black history with details that I'd never heard before, information I'd never come across before. It was just absolutely mind-boggling. And had the opportunity to meet him again and spend time with him one of the times when Yasser Safari was in the UK, and he's also been a great support in the work that I've been able to do. Then I thought it would be great to nominate David Alston, who is was a founder of Black History Conversations, and David's gone on to publish his very successful book, Highlanders and Slavery, and uncovering and very much raising the profile and understanding of Scotland's enormous involvement in the slave trade and the and plantation ownership, almost more than the slave trade, but slave ownership. So that, I thought that might be suitable. Then here we've got Sean Creighton, who I think you deserve an award too, because of all the work that you've done and that you've told us about, Sean. So I don't know if you want to say anything, or we can talk about this again, but I thought that would be great. Also, Professor Hakim Adi, who I don't know personally, but he's someone who's amazing and deserves recognition. But maybe it might be 2024 by the time we get round to giving him his award. We'll have to invite him to come on the session, so that's another good reason. Also, Professor Olivette Otelli, who's the first Black woman professor of Black history at Bristol University. Again, maybe it'll be next year when we could invite her to come along and do a presentation session. That would be really good. And for nominations elsewhere in the world, got Vivian Crawford here, because Vivian has just done so much in his brilliant work. And I'll come to you now, Garrick. Absolutely fantastic work that you've done over the years in Jamaica to raise awareness of Black history. And well, it's your history, it's Jamaican history, it's African history, it's our shared history. So Vivian, I put forward that nomination. Right, I'm going to stop sharing so I can see Garrick and take his point. Thank you.
Can I just say the list that you've just showed us, Liz,
it's very worthy, Liz. So it's a good starting point. Just to say a few words about the very first person you referred to, Mariska Sherwood. I know her health has been deteriorating a little bit. It's somebody I worked with for a number of years. Back with the newsletter, she did feature article about my experience and life, etc., in one of those article around Black history. And also Dr. Ray Costello. So all three of us, we were sort of working together. And she obviously deserve recognition. And I think that's a really excellent idea. So to give her that recognition and to send the certificate from all of those present today. Maybe we can just, put the names that is present today when we send the certificate to Marika.
I think that could be lovely. There was a couple of special reasons why I acted very quickly, Garrick, because she really isn't too good at all at the moment, but I'll chat with you about that. I didn't know that you knew her. She came on one of our sessions one time and she was just so interesting. Sean, I'm sure you want to come in here.
Well, I'm very grateful for you putting me forward. And I think it's excellent to start with Marika, who I've obviously known for many years through BASA. In terms of absolute priority, Liz has already pointed out in the chat room that Hakim Adi's professorship and his Black History course is under threat at the University of Chichester, and it would be good to do him an award over the next month or so as part of the support campaign for him.
Right.
I think there are lots of other people, and while it is flattering that you've put me forward, I think there are a range of other people whose contribution has public contribution has been much greater in terms of what they've done. People like Geoffrey Green, Stephen Bourne, other people kind of behind the scenes, Audrey Doogie, in the eastern part of the country, Martin Spafford, who's now active in Justice, I can never remember the name, Justice for All campaign, who was another ex-BASA activist. Just lots and lots of people. Lucy with her work in the Southeast. And I think if we're to recognize people who've really had a big impact, I think we should consider David Olusoga, because he has reached hundreds of thousands of people through his television programs.
It's very interesting indeed. Thank you. That's really a brilliant list. So if we're to do this, and I've made a start without consulting with anybody. I think I consulted with Simon, because it just seems like a really good idea. One thing is that we can, a lot of us need to be educated. A lot of the names you've just given, Sean, I don't know. So we're going to need different people to sort of write the citations for people. Then if people are still around and able and want to come, then we can ask them to do a presentation. We couldn't, for example, ask Marika to come and do that. But it might be an opportunity to learn about people, and at the same time we're also learning about Black history and learning from other people how they've gone about exploring and unlocking Black histories of all different kinds, whether it's an area or a topic or a theme or whatever. So that's absolutely brilliant. So, Jean, will you be on the working group then, creating this list of people? That would be brilliant. And I think you deserve credit as well. So
well, that's very kind of you. But yes, I will happy to be on that working group. But I'm afraid I have to go now because I've got to go with my wife to a hospital appointment.
All right. Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
We'll just talk through a few other things. Thanks very much for joining us. Right,
thank you.
Okay. Lovely. That was brilliant. I'm just going to share this these few PowerPoints with you because this will inform us for the future when we get to talk with Laura. Now, in my links with her, I'm able to link with her directly. I can email her directly, so she's very open, which is fantastic. And I found this. I have difficulties over here in Australia accessing BBC TV programs, but this was available to me, and it talks about what Laura's been doing. So I think it would be quite a good idea if at least some of us were a little bit more well informed about what she's doing, so we can ask some sensible questions. So this was just to explain how the BBC explains it. That the descendants of John Trevelyan, who are quoted in these next slides, slavery was and is unacceptable and repugnant. Its damaging effects continue to the present day. We repudiate our ancestors' involvement in it. And there was another one, a public letter. Through a donation by Laura Trevelyan, we've been able to contribute to setting up the Reparations Research Fund at the University of the West Indies to look at the economic impacts of enslavement. Then this was another thing that I found in the 18th century. The family of BBC World News anchor and correspondent Laura Trevelyan were absentee landowners on the island of Grenada, profiting for years from the sale of sugar harvested from 5 different sugarcane plantations. And when slavery was abolished in 1834, the UK government paid compensation to slave owners, but the enslaved received nothing. So they're telling the story all over again. Well, this has to happen. In the wake of the racial reckoning in America following the death of George Floyd, Grenada's National Commission on Reparations for Slavery has begun to meet and debate what reparations means. And in this film, so you can look this up and watch it if you're in the UK, Grenada Confronting the Past. Laura travels to Grenada to try and learn more about the legacy of slave trade on Grenada and her family's involvement in the slave trade. But she's also currently engaged in work in Jamaica as well, and that's what I wanted particularly to be asking her about and to be interested. Now, years ago she wrote this book, and just going back to the points that you were making, Lucy, about, you know, back in the day when we really didn't know about a lot of things. This is a book she wrote years ago, and it's about her family. And it's entirely about how her family lived and things they did as a very wealthy family in the UK. And that was her telling the story of her family then. Now she's realised the implications, and she's really making efforts to try and make some sort of reparations, and she's set up this organisation called the Heirs of Slavery. Now, we've got an enormous mailing list for Black History Conversations, which goes out to, as I say, a lot of people. So this is Christine White, and I can't remember Richard's surname. She knows quite well, and he's sometimes spoken on our they're both researchers. So she wants to ask her a question, so I've kept a record there. This is what we've been looking at here. And this is relevant to talking about Laura Trevelyan and the heirs of slavery, because one of the participants in Heirs of Slavery, the group is King Charles's cousin, can't remember his name. So they're operating at that kind of social level hierarchy. So this was just to say that on his first ever 4-day visit to Kenya, King Charles expressed great sorrow and deep regret for the abhorrent and unjustifiable acts of violence committed against Kenyans as they sought independence, and so he should. I'm not going to read all that too, because you can look that up and you probably had it on your UK news. Now I found somebody sent me this. I can't remember who. I do apologise. Lloyd, I think it was Simon. Lloyd's of London deeply sorry over slavery links. Now, what's interesting is that there's a lot now coming out in the reports and things about this, and the involvement of Lloyd's. So there's still momentum continuing since the Black Lives Matter campaign set up, and that's around the world. Even here in Australia with our negative referendum result, there is still a lot going on about Black history issues here. But as Kahendi Andrews says from Black Studies at University of Birmingham, he sees the move as a PR exercise and frankly offensive. Anyway, they apologise for the links, and I was doing some research and keeping it all on here. Now, when we do the website, it's going to also be possible to put the PowerPoints on the website, so I might make them a bit more organised. So there's heaps of information to read about that and resources, and as we want to be able to help other people who are teaching about Black history, to have these resources on a decent website should make a big difference. And it's Jim Thakordin who's funded this initiative. So our website, I mean, it's enormous. Right, so this is something else that I saw about that might be of interest to some of you. Oops, it is, I'm sorry. Empty Sleeve, the story of the West India regiments of the British Army. That's Hansib Publications, so I get their information as well. And we'll be able to have links to be able to show where there are currently interesting books and resources. And then thank you, Sean. It's gone now, but Sean put me through, gave me the link to the Tyneside Remembering Slavery site. So I looked it up, and in the search I put, can you see here, I put Trevelyan's in the search, and then I came up with all these resources about the Trevelyan's and Grenada slave ownership. So that was great. So and this particular page went on forever. But this is another thing that I found that I was interested by, I think it was Lucy, you mentioned that your stuff in Devon and many other places. And I always use the example of Bewdley in Worcestershire. There was some great work done a couple of years back in Bewdley to identify the Black history links in Bewdley. But when I got back there this last summer, went to the museum in Bewdley in Worcestershire, they had no idea about this research. And so what will happen to all this great research that people are doing around and about? And then so it might be that this UKRI, that stands for Arts and Humanities Research Council, are looking at setting up a national collection, and we're also talking to the National Archives as well, and there's somebody there looking at something. So whether they could have a category on Black history in there, and then all the links and information could be shared. Now this is an interesting one as well. British Library's advertising for the post of a Black Studies Curator, and the details are as follows. So that would be a really interesting thing. So if you know anybody who wants a good job and get an application in, then that's worth looking for. So just spreading the word on that one. think we're at the end now, yes. Okay, so I just wanted to share those as things that I found. Carrick, I'm sorry I didn't see your hand.
In addition to Lloyd's of London, Liz, the Bank of England is currently running an exhibition on slavery, transatlantic slavery. It opens till February 2024. So it's running currently till February 2024. If you just Google the Bank of England website, you'll see it's on. Now, what they say, let me just read a paragraph. The exhibition explored the history of transatlantic slavery through its connection with the Bank of England and the wider city of London for over 300 years. The slave trade tore more than 12 million Africans from their home and families. In the exhibition, we reflect on how the wealth created through transatlantic slavery shaped the development of Britain.
Great. So if you come across anything that you think you'd like to raise on this, then
yeah, I'm intending to visit the exhibition because
to all
I haven't visited the exhibition yet. I'm intending to do so in the new year.
Okay. Okay then. Right, I'm taking Lucy next, and then you, Robert. And Lucy, I've seen you comment in the chat as well.
Great.
A
colleagues of mine from the Legacies of Devon and Slavery group have been to that Bank of England exhibition, and it's really interesting.
Right.
I haven't seen it myself. I just think there's one small point to make when we look at the monies involved in this, which is the modern equivalences. And they're broadly, apparently there are two ways of looking at modern values. One is based on capital value and one is based on labor value. And of course, they're very vague, they're not precise. But when we look in records of the past that record an African enslaved person being sold, and it says £10, I think in our brains, we think £10. But actually, and I may be remembering the figures wrongly, but it's something like 5,000, or if you use the labour costs, £20,000. So as we look at these records, I think our unconscious brains are not getting it, okay? We're not getting how much money British people were investing. You know, if I invest £10 in something, it's nothing. If I invest £5,000 in something, or I haven't got £5,000 to invest, but you know, if I was to do that, it's something else. And I think it's a point that we need to be very clear about in our understanding of the past.
That's a good point.
Thank you.
I remember, I've forgotten his name, Nick Dearden, I think it was, from Lancaster University. He included something about the the real value of the monies that he was talking about in his talk. But it's something to bring forward again, and I think you're quite right there. Thank you.
And Nick Draper from UCL was always very clear about that. He, incidentally, I think is a person who could be given an award because of the enormous effect he's had in mainstream society by his careful work and the foundation of the UCL project and how that influenced the Olusoga work on television. You know, I often find people are telling me about these programs in their, you know, they're not interested in Black history really, but they've seen these programs and they're telling me because they know I'm interested. And I love it when people who haven't been previously interested are telling me stuff because they think I'll be interested. Of course I am, but that's important. That's the pivotal moment of a wider number of people being interested, of it not being a minority interest, but becoming mainstreamed information.
Yeah,
thank you.
Very, very good point. Thanks, Lucy. Robert.
Well, yes, just following up on that money issue, the compensation paid to the owners of enslaved people. It's the largest ever item of expenditure by a UK government in the whole of the history of the United Kingdom. I mean, more than, you know, the cost of health service and wars and heaven knows what. It's an enormous sum of money. And they only made the last payments in 2015. And I think that needs to be taken into account when issues of reparations are considered. Very few people realize just how big this compensation package was. And of course, zero compensation for the enslaved people. The reason I put my hand up, first of all, Liz, was in your penultimate slide, I think it was, there was a mention of humanities and the Humanities Research Council, which I think comes under UKRI, UK Research and Innovation, which used to be the Science Research Council. Yeah. I don't know whether people know, but the UKRI had a sort of equality and human rights committee. And that has now been, that doesn't operate now because quite recently, I think it was the Home Secretary sounded off about 2 academics on that committee who she mentioned by name and accused of supporting Hamas. Oh. Now, that was untruthful. They had not supported Hamas, and I don't know anybody who has. And she said that those people should be dismissed from that committee. UKRI, to its great discredit, instantly complied and suspended those 2 academic members of the Race and Equality Committee, or whatever it was called. And I believe the whole committee has now come out in sympathy. So, you know, here was an institution that could have been setting a good example, but once challenged on, you know, an issue that I would have thought was pretty non-controversial, namely to want some peace in the Middle East, they immediately caved in to the government. You know, so much for academic freedom and so much for the pursuit of equality and human rights.
Yes, it's scary, isn't it? Yeah, yeah. Thank you very much for those comments, Robert. That's good. Okay then. So has anybody else got anything else you want to add? I'll just check my email and see.
Crawford, Liz.
Sorry?
Vivian, Liz.
Vivian, yes.
Yes, my board is working. Thank you.
I was looking on, you know, I can cover my screen with something else if I'm looking. Yeah.
Something that has never been done, that I'm aware of at least, is the Zong massacre and the World Declaration Day for that massacre, which started on and followed the 29th of November, 1781. This numbered among the sites of memory that I initiated. Again, I was in England and saw in a newspaper that would be taking the anniversary with the following year, also Mary Seacole's date of birth. But the Zong massacre, I am taken aback that there is never any official recognition throughout the world to say this is the Zong Day. Call it Zong Day. And those of you who visit Jamaica, you must go to Black River, because at Black River, where the river flows into the sea, at that very spot, that was where the remainder of the enslaved landed, 130 were thrown overboard. And that is where they were landed. They were oiled, put on the auction block. And the space, the building is still there, brick building. It's now a restaurant. But I often wonder, why is it that throughout the world, it's never declared a Zong Day? We never stop, we never ponder, we never pause and remember those who perished at the hands of their brothers.
I think we need to, I think that's so profound. Certainly when it comes to the end of the month, we can have Zong recognition. Maybe you can, I don't know if you can find some illustrations or
oh yeah, sure, Liz. We if the committee is in agreement, at least near the date, we could do something. Never let it be said that they had perished as though they had never been, because the ship left Africa with 442 enslaved West Africa, twice the number of persons. And one can follow it up on Google and what have you. But it's a most touching story.
I've just done a bit of maths. My maths isn't brilliant, but I think that that it's about 8 years until the 250th anniversary of the Zong massacre. So we've got 8 years to put things in place to make sure that that story is one of the stories that's recognised.
And Iquiano, his contribution to telling that story. Yeah.
Thank you so much then. Right, any other things that you've been thinking about that you wanted to add, or shall we wrap things up there? Okay, I've just been considering, I'm sitting here, you know, like it's in the middle of the night, and I get this email from Laura, and I just thought, I don't know, how are we going to cope? But everybody's rallied round, and thank you so much. That was brilliant. And I think this idea of the awards is, personally, I think it's a good idea, because I'm having to learn so much from people who've spent their lives committed and learning about Black history and sharing Black history, and I'm so respectful. And we've had Helen here with us. Helen's the author of a wonderful book called The Butterfly and the Bee, and you talked to us in the early days about that and the research you'd done to explore the story of Henry Morton Stanley's wife, whose name I've forgotten. Can
I just say, Liz, that it's interesting about the Trevelyan family, because Dorothy Tennant, who became Mrs. or Lady Stanley, believed that she'd had an affair with George Otto Trevelyan. And there is no evidence in anything I could find on the Trevelyan side, but there are certainly paintings and that on the wall of Wallington Hall, which the Trevelyan family owned. So I think there's certainly a bit of a history between the two of them.
Right, yes, that's an interesting one. And Lucy says, please can we remember the campaign for a memorial to the slave trade in Hyde Park, which Oku Ekpenyon has led for so many years. Well, it's great to have you on the sessions, Laura. Just keep on coming up with things that we ought to know more about. I'm just aware that when I switch off, I'll have switched off all the messages as well, so I better keep a track of that one. And we want the suggestion that we have a specific session Zoom meeting to discuss candidates for the awards. What I've tried to do this season is to actually plan in advance, which means that we're less flexible than we used to be, because we used to make it up every week. So it would be difficult now, unless we just by chance get a session like this, which is not really right, because it needs to be something more significant. So I'll have to give that some thought, if that's all right, Lucy. and Roland, you put a lot of information into the chat that I'm just copying off, if I can. Yeah, just a minute. So excuse me muttering away here. But if I stop the recording, I haven't got the chapter go into. So I've got that information that you presented. Thank you very much indeed. So Roland's saying get to know your local Windrush advocates in Liverpool. That's this Saturday, as you said, 11 o'clock. Fantastic. You're going up for that. And then is also, they do the Justice for Windrush Generation things every couple of weeks. So there's another bit of information there. So I'm just collecting that off the yes.
Liz?
I'll tell you what time it is here in a minute, and then you'll wonder. So there's a comment here about the useful book on the impact of climate change on migration. Is Jeremy Williams' Climate Change is Racist? Am I reading this right, Helen?
Yes, definitely.
Right.
An excellent book.
All right, that's really interesting then. So I think I've got all the things off the
Liz?
so I can mention those on the PowerPoint next week. Yeah, okay then. So back I come. Right, that's me again. All right then, Garrick.
Liz? No.
I think Coy is wanting to make a point, Liz. Can we just bring him in?
Yes, Coy. Yeah.
No, a quick one on the relative cost, price of a slave.
Oh,
I have a book here. I think it's done by Jamaica Surveyed. It had a Negro at £50 and a mule at £30. Just the relative. So you can.
So Lucy, can you do the the change? We need like an XC for what this would be worth for.
And while Lucy's doing that, the corollary to that is what was made by Alex Reston on this program.
Yeah.
That we were regarded as half animal and half human. Interesting. Alex Renton in his book, Blood Legacy.
Yes.
I can't provide you with a number. And if you knew how good my maths was, you'd be very glad I wasn't anyway, because I'd only get it wrong. Look it up online. Look up online, converting money values to today's value, and you will find a number of different choices. And some of them give you it down to pounds, shillings, and pence in old money. Right. It's only ever a rough indication, but there is this very important distinction between whether the calculation is made on the value of capital goods and the value of labor. And the value of labor comes out as twice as big as capital goods. And I think the value of labor is a more important measure in terms of the selling of humans for their labor. But I mean, I'm sorry, I've raised it, but I can't give you the answer. But you can find it. You can find it, and it's in the Legacies of Devon Slavery group that I work in. Every now and again, I'm getting confused with modern numbers, and I say to my colleagues, "Yeah, what's that in today's money?" Because I want to really get it.
Yes, yeah.
Really is that clear?
Yes, thank you very much indeed.
Why are we
I think Vivian
with today's money? Why are we equating it with today's money?
Sorry, could you?
Rationale?
Why are we wanting today's value?
Yes.
Okay, for me, it may not be important to other people, but for me, when I read a document that, I mean, of course, people should never have been sold, obviously, but when I read a document from the 18th century that tells me an African man is sold for £10, my subconscious thinks, poof, £10, that's not much. I need it to be translated for me to understand the enormity of the investment that Westerners were making. It makes it more realistic to me.
And realistically,
and looking at you, Vivian, it looks like you're not interested in that, which is fine, because I think different people are interested in different things. But I found it really helpful to me to understand the enormity of it, that this was not little investments people made. People gathered money and put enormous money into this because it was so productive. What's the word I want? It made a lot of money for them.
Okay. The reason why I'm not interested is that there is someone who was not a slave who was sold for 30 pieces of silver. So I am not interested.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's different people are interested in different things, and I understand what you're saying.
I think one thing I'm interested in finance is, you know, how the work of enslaved workers accrued so much money. I'm sorry, Garrick, you got your finger up. That's interests me. Garrick, you have to unmute yourself. Garrick, I can't hear you, dear.
Sorry about that. So tomorrow is the 11th of November.
Yeah.
And we're moving into Remembrance.
Yes.
Remembrance Day. And just for us to bear in mind, when we're remembering, we need to be remembering the African and West Indian soldiers who gave their life, and also all the Commonwealth soldiers, including Asia, etc. We don't often see on the parade enough people represented at Whitehall, but we know that they have paid with their own life for freedom. And in Liverpool, we have the Black Sailors, and we will always on Remembrance Day go to that memorial for those Black African sailors and just pay our respects. So wherever we are in the world, then we just need to remember those who have paid their lives.
Very interesting, Garrick. Thank you for making this point, because I took these two photographs off the television just before this session started. These flags are images that are now displayed, I think, for the next fortnight because of the Remembrance Day tomorrow. And they feature people from the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islands who fought in the war. So that's an interesting thing that's happening here. Just get the next one up. And here they are. I think this must be in Sydney, I would imagine. And just while we're at it, look, this is the family silver here. Family silver waiting to be cleaned in front of the telly. And I found this little ship at a junk shop the other day. And I bought it because, like you're saying, Vivian, it's the remembering, you know, these ships were so, you know, they must have been so awful to sail in, so scary. So I bought that to remind myself.
And the only other point, Liz, what Roland was putting in the chat, on Sunday we have our Sunday chat. Yeah. We can find that on the Eventbrite platform or in Justice for Windrush Generation. But the following week, next Tuesday, the 14th of November, we're in Parliament. That's our last session for this year. 14th, 5:30 p.m. till 7:30 p.m. Our guest speaker is Dr. Juanita Cox, sharing a research that she has done across the Caribbean Studies, a project that was supported and funded by University of London.
Has that finished now, her research?
Yes, her research is finished now. Yes, so she's going to be
Oh,
publishing. Yeah.
oh, that's fantastic. Well, we must get her to come and talk to us on here as well. That's fabulous, Garrick. And the fact that the Justice for Unjust Generations and other is it entirely you're doing that you have these sessions once a month in Parliament?
Yes, yes, they're exclusive to us. We started this in 2021, and we continue as long as it takes to actually get changes to the compensation scheme.
It going. So impressive. I've just got every regard. Yeah, great. Okay, so thank you very much, everybody. We didn't do a prayer to start this session. Do you want to do a prayer to finish it, Vivian?
Thank you. Let us pray in reverence before God, who is our maker, defender, redeemer, and friend. And so, gracious Father, we thank you for continually guiding our process. Remember planet Earth. Remember in a special way those who mourn. They shall be comforted. We thank you for the participation of all members of this group. And we thank you for guiding our coordinator, Liz. Gracious God, let us remember that yours is the glory. And as we leave to our several abode, we ask for your continued guidance. For yours is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you very much indeed, Vivian. And it's respectful for us to have a prayer out at the start or maybe the end of a meeting, because that's the way things happen in Jamaica. So if you're in Jamaica and you're in a meeting, then the prayer is an important element of it. All right, thank you so much then. So I'm going to switch off now and go to bed. Excellent. All right, talk to you soon then, Garrick. Lots of exciting things happening. Okay, bye. Good to get to know what works people are involved in. Thanks a lot, Lucy. It was brilliant to have you join us. Thank you very, very much indeed. Absolutely excellent. Bye then, Helen. Lovely to see you again. Great to see Vivian, Walter and Coy. Lovely. Okay. Bye everyone then. Bye.